Howdy, folks, and welcome to another episode of Untold Tales from This Side of Nowhere. As you know, I'm your host, Connor Jones, and I'm bringing you a fresh story from about as close as you can get to the middle of nowhere. That's Poverty Flats, Wyoming. This week's episode is sponsored by Basins Market. Basins Market, located in Basin, Wyoming, is your destination for groceries, fresh produce, and the best meat department in the Bighorn Basin. Come on in and sample their wide selection of products Monday through Saturday from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. and Sundays from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. We're also sponsored by the Wyoming Welcome Program. The Wyoming Welcome Program helps small businesses in northwestern Wyoming get their name out, and they do so with both Table Talk brochures, which are placed on restaurant tables in Cody and Powell, and Wyoming Welcome Baskets, which are distributed to newcomers to Park County and the surrounding area. If you would like to participate in the brochures or the baskets and get your business name out there, you can send an email to the folks at Wyoming Welcome Program at HaleyJ, that's HALEYJ, at wyomingwelcome.com. And now, the podcast. Well, summer is definitely winding down here in northwestern Wyoming. I had my last day at the Weed and Pest yesterday. We were spraying the Frisbee golf course for Russian olives and salt cedars there at the bridge in Grable. But I've been all over the northern end of the Bighorns, from the Little Bighorn parks on the Sheridan side clear down to Shell Ranger Station on the other side of things. And gosh, I sure have loved being in the Bighorns. Today I took Haley and the boys, and we drove up to Forest Service Road 125 and rode down into the canyon along the Little Bighorn River, and rode our four-wheeler, and it was a lot of fun. Caught a couple fish with Ruben and just had a blast. It was a great way to end summer before I go back to teaching on Monday. Teachers will go back a week before students. If you have a student who's entering school, or if you're one of my fellow educators, our time has come and summer is ending. But it's been a great summer. I've had a lot of fun and gotten a lot of work done and spent some quality time with my wife and kids. So I hope you have had a fantastic summer too. An exciting part of the summer has been watching the Olympics. Go USA. I'm biased. I mean, if you're one of our international listeners, we're proud of you too. I think most countries medaled in this Olympics, or a large number of them, and we sure had a good time watching all of those Olympic athletes. And as I was watching, I got to thinking about how the Olympics are amazing, fantastic, but they could be better with a touch of the outdoors. So this week's story is called The Outdoor Olympics. Here goes. As I watched the recent Olympic Games, I was absolutely astounded by just how athletic those people are compared to myself. There are people on this planet who can run, jump, and swim like nobody's business, and it's pretty amazing. Heck, even the ping pong players are pretty incredible. I've only seen reflexes that rivaled theirs when watching my dad's old dog, Beowulf, snap mosquitoes out of the air. Anyone who has spent a summer evening in Poverty Flats can tell you the mosquitoes are like the cars that make up traffic in Southern California. They're everywhere, and they suck the life out of you. That reminds me, I actually have seen reflexes that could rival Olympic ping pong players on one other occasion. When my wife Lily slaps at the little parasites, she can get a rhythm going so fast it would put even the fastest of ping pong players to shame. In fact, There may be more than one instance in which I've seen nearly superhuman agility and athleticism demonstrated in an outdoor setting. Not surprisingly, many of them involve interactions with wild animals, but there are at least one or two that occurred without the threat of getting digested by a large predator. I guess what I'm getting at is there ought to be some more outdoor events at the Olympics, perhaps even an outdoor Olympics itself. I mean, anyone who has watched the shooting events at the Olympics has probably been as disappointed as I am that the athletes are shooting at a stationary target that is shaped like a piece of crockery. Where's the excitement in that? At the very least, an event in which the targets are hunting decoys would help spice things up a bit. I think the viewership would increase exponentially if world-class sharpshooters were laying down fire on some white-tailed deer, or at least some pretty good imitations of them. Skeet shooting can stay. Having shot some skeet myself, or shot at it, I am amazed by how accurate the Olympians are. They probably haven't shot skeet out of the back of a moving vehicle, though. Out on Poverty Flats, us kids loved going to Waylon Nestor's place for the parties. Waylon was probably in his mid-30s, but was still young at heart, if you know what I mean. The first time Fred and I were invited to Waylon's house, we must have been 15, and we were greeted by his 4-year-old daughter throwing knives at a target. She was a pretty good throw, too. That was when we knew that Waylon's place was the place. Waylon loved having teens from the flats come over and barbecue, watch an old Nicolas Cage movie, and shoot stuff. I'm sure if the event we came up with made it to the Olympics, it would be incredibly popular. Basically, our trick shooting involved standing in the back of a moving Polaris Ranger with a bow and arrow. I know what you're thinking. Why a Polaris Ranger? That just happened to be the vehicle we had on hand, and its suspension was good enough to reduce some of the turbulence that came from driving through the potholes in Waylon's dirt driveway. Anyways, we would stand in the back of the Ranger, and the driver would take us past a target shaped like a white-tailed deer, and we would attempt to hit the target from the back of a moving vehicle. Sounds great, right? I'm telling you, NBC's viewership would skyrocket if people started doing archery from the back of a moving vehicle. The Olympics have already attempted to incorporate some other outdoor sports besides shooting. For instance, rowing in various forms has been a huge part of the Olympics since the early 20th century. Watching the teams compete in perfect harmony as they slice through the water in their impressive racing shells is an iconic part of the Olympic Games, and the individual rowing events never fail to please either. I'm not sure the current rowing events can match the excitement of an authentic rowing experience, though. I mean, those athletes are incredible with an oar in their hands, but how would they fare with nothing in their hands? You see, my buddy Mark Crawfry and I once found ourselves in a position that inspired what I believe was an Olympics-worthy effort to row a 6-person raft with nothing but our bare hands, upriver. What's more, we did so with almost no previous experience. I admit life-or-death situations are pretty useful for inspiring such efforts. On the map, it looked like the death trap narrows weren't too bad, and we maintained that impression basically right up to the point where we entered them. When Mark asked if we should pull the raft out and carry it past the narrows, the water was calm and slow-moving, like a buffalo in a wildflower-covered meadow. You can imagine our surprise when, shortly after deciding not to port our raft, the river started to act more like a buffalo that had been stung by a wasp, bucking and doing its utmost to provide our wives with a life insurance payout that would set them up for life. I'm not sure if it was the large boulders we rammed the raft into in an effort to slow our progress down the raging river, or if it was the river itself that yanked the paddle from my hands. But regardless of the cause, Mark and I quickly lost our paddles. It was soon thereafter that we discovered the place marked Widowmaker Falls on the map had been aptly named. As I gripped handfuls of the rubber raft in both hands, and Mark did the same in front of me, the mind-numbing terror of shooting the Narrows was suddenly disturbed by an impressive roar that drowned out the rushing water around us. "Mark!" I yelped. "Do you hear that?" "What?" Mark yelled back. "Do you hear that?" I hollered. "Paddle! Paddle for your life!" Mark replied. "What?" I yelled. That was when I glimpsed the waterfall in front of us. If you think those Olympians can row a boat, you should have seen the effort Mark and I put into it. I turned so my back was facing the thunderous cascade and began using both hands to claw at the water on the upriver side of the raft. Mark did the same, madly pawing at the river in a desperate attempt to slow our advance toward the waterfall. I think there may have been a moment where the raft actually did slow down. But if there was, I must have missed it because of the volume of Mark's screams. I admit that paddling for your life might not be the most dignified Olympic event, but it would make for great television. The other issue with adding paddling for your life to the Olympics would be finding a suitable spot to do it. Some of the countries where they host the Olympics lack the necessary rapids and accompanying waterfall, but I'm sure some sort of man-made structure could be cooked up to effectively imitate the experience. Track and field events may be the most popular sport in the Olympics, and it's no surprise. Everyone wants to know who can run the fastest, jump the highest, and throw the farthest. There have been many times when I've watched, astounded by the efforts of track and field athletes, but I have to admit the realm of outdoor sports could really add some extra excitement. How about the hammer throw? A beefy athlete spins in a circle with an iron ball on a chain and then flings it as far as possible. Just imagine the heightened enthusiasm of the crowd if that iron ball were replaced with, say, a hunting dog that had latched onto your favorite hat. I've encountered my fair share of dogs that didn't know when to let something go, and spinning with one clinging fiercely to an article of clothing would surely enhance the sport. Of course, hunting dogs probably don't travel as far as the iron ball that is currently being thrown in the hammer throw, so that might be a letdown of sports, and the athlete has to sacrifice an article of clothing as well. That being said, I'm willing to bet the spectators would support putting an outdoor spin on the sport. Are those Olympic runners really running at their top speed? Our cabin in the Bighorn Mountains of Wyoming is not equipped with an indoor bathroom, which means the facilities are conveniently located behind the cabin inside a cozy wooden building that smells so strongly of you-know-what, I'm sure it wouldn't be advisable to bring any open flames into the vicinity. As a kid, I observed that during the day, the distance from the cabin to the outhouse was about 15 yards. But once darkness fell, that distance expanded to at least 400 meters. I can remember long nights resisting nature's call in order to avoid making the trip to the outhouse in the dark, but the need to go would always win out. So, flashlight in hand, I would make my way out onto the squeaky wood porch of the cabin and streak through the night, positive some carnivorous animal was in hot pursuit. I'm sure many land speed records have been set and broken from the back door of the cabin to the outhouse, and I wouldn't doubt many Olympians could improve on their times, given the same opportunity. My wife Lily pointed out that in this day of modern conveniences like indoor plumbing, most Olympic athletes have probably never encountered an outhouse and would therefore be at a disadvantage in such an event. Well, I replied, we can always include a live bear to help them get the idea. Live bears always liven things up. I know high jumpers and long jumpers are phenomenal, but they too could benefit from an outdoor twist, and probably the introduction of more wildlife. Anyone who has become suddenly aware of the presence of a rattlesnake near their feet knows what it feels like to make a truly spectacular jump. Some of the best jumping I've ever seen and done has been accompanied by the appearance of a rattlesnake. Once when I was clearing Russian olives near our house on Poverty Flats, I was crossing a barbed wire fence with a chainsaw in one hand. With the other hand, I pushed down on the second wire of the fence and then straddled it, the top wire now parallel to my back. My face was about 18 inches from the ground, and that was close enough that when I noticed the rattlesnake, we could probably have smelled one another's breath. I can't tell you what the snake's breath smelled like, however, and I doubt he could tell you what mine smelled like, because we remained that close to one another for approximately 8 nanoseconds before my inner Olympic athlete took over. With a strangled scream that was probably audible in Cody 50 miles away, I launched myself into the air. I had already been in a crouched position, which only added to my jump. I'm not sure exactly how high I jumped, but I'm sure it would have been even higher if the top wire of the fence wasn't exactly above my spine. I can say that the jump likely rivaled the performance of most Olympic high jumpers, and if the snake wasn't impressed, then he was at least frightened by the sight of a teenage human removing 3 fence posts and 60 feet of barbed wire from the ground with a single leap. The Russian olives remained where they were, even if the fence didn't. I admit surprising world-class athletes with venomous snakes is probably not advisable, but if the snake's appearance wasn't a surprise, the effect could still make a positive impact on their performance. Perhaps a snake pit could be introduced. I know I would be pretty motivated to jump higher or farther if it meant avoiding a pit full of snakes. Lily was quick to point out that the Olympics are held in different locations across the world, and getting grizzly bears and rattlesnakes to places like Japan or Paris would be a nightmare for both the animals and the folks who organize the Olympics. While I hate to admit she has a point, she's probably right. I guess if I want to see Olympic athletes compete in the outdoors, I'll just have to invite more of them to come spend some time in Wyoming. Now that is something I would love to see. There you go, Olympics fans. I hope you got to catch some of the Olympics this year. And if you're like me, you're probably thinking about how it could be a little bit more exciting if you incorporated a live animal. You know, those 100-meter sprinters, you put a cougar behind one of them, I bet they would break all kinds of world records. And speaking of world records, if you haven't seen, what is that guy's name? He jumped for Sweden, but he's actually from Louisiana. Let's see, I'll look up this guy. He was a pole vaulter, he is a pole vaulter. He just broke the world record. His name's Armand Duplantis, and you should go watch that video of him breaking the world record if you haven't seen it yet. I haven't come up with a practical application for pole vaulting. When I was a kid, I imagined my high jumping skills might help me when I was running in the woods, getting over logs or something. But if you can think of a really good practical application for pole vaulting in the outdoors, I'd like to hear about it. But yeah, it's a cool video. Armand Duplantis, world record pole vault. Pretty fantastic. Anyways, I was going to point out that I've taken a look at my statistics for the podcast, and we're getting close to 3,000 downloads, but what's really neat to me is where people are listening from. I mean, it probably comes as no surprise that Wyoming has the highest number of viewers when it comes to listeners, when it comes to the United States. There are like 750 downloads in Wyoming. But I bet you didn't know that Untold Tales from This Side of Nowhere has listeners from an additional 29 U.S. states. That's correct. We have listeners from 30 of the 50 United States. So that is pretty fantastic. Yeah, we have 750 downloads in Wyoming, followed by Utah and Colorado in third place. Now, as far as internationally speaking goes, you would probably be surprised to know that Untold Tales from This Side of Nowhere has been downloaded in 11 countries. So, of course, the United States has the majority of the downloads, like 98% of them. But we have listeners in Canada, Russia, Germany, Singapore, Slovakia, Malaysia, Australia, the UK, Mexico, and even New Zealand. So, that being said, I guess Poverty Flats, the smallest town in the middle of nowhere, has had an international, kind of a global impact. And I'm really curious to know where you're listening from. So I would invite you, when you listen to this episode, to go over to our Facebook page. And I've made a post with pictures showing maps of the placement of our different listeners. And go ahead and respond to that post with a comment telling me where you're listening from, and we'd be more than happy to hear from you. I think it'd be awesome to put a name with the place and just see where the audience of Untold Tales from This Side of Nowhere comes from. So pretty cool. Yep, we're approaching 3,000 downloads in 11 countries and 30 U.S. states. Pretty cool. So enjoy the last few days of summer if you're headed back to school. If you're not, we're jealous, but enjoy the warm weather. And as always, this has been another Untold Tale from This Side of Nowhere, where we work twice as hard for half as much and still find time for the important things, like fishing. See you next time, folks.